In today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, we're talking about Roth conversion planning for those who are over 60 years old. And so there's a window of opportunity here, especially when it comes to waiting for those required minimum distributions to kick in at age 73 or 75, depending on when you're born there. If you're born in 1960 or after, then your age is 75, that we're required to take out some of that money that you're forced to take out by the government at that point. And so obviously you have a window of time to do some of this, but there is some landmines in the middle of those 15 years. If you're 60 years old right now, as an example, you have to worry about Social Security taxation. You have to worry about Medicare premium tiers. You have to worry about the different tax brackets associated with it, any capital gains that come up when you're doing these Roth conversions. So at the end of this video, the hope is that you have a really good understanding and an idea of what you need to be aware of when you're looking to do Roth conversions. Whether you're looking to do Roth conversions on your own, hopefully this can give you a really good check mark and checklist to know what to look for. Maybe you have an advisor who's not doing Roth conversions for you. This could be something for you to see and open your eyes to see if that's the right advisor for you, or to see if you need to seek out help from another team. And so that's really the hope of this video, to provide that educational content so you can maximize your retirement. And this content is specifically for those who are in the 2% club, who have a pension, which only 20% of people have, and who have $1 million or more saved, which is less than 10% of the population. And if you're good at math, you combine those two percentages, you're left with 2% of the US is in that situation with a high income and high net worth. So that's what we have in store for today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So we talk about Roth quite frequently on this channel, and I Hate Taxes is a book that I wrote on this concept of tax planning. Now, if you're looking for more information on tax planning, subscribe to this channel because we cover this quite a bit, especially if you're in that 2% club I mentioned. Or if you want to, I'm more than happy to have our team send you out a copy of the I Hate Taxes book in the description below if you click on the link, so that you can request that and get that book sent out to you. We're more than happy to give some value to those who are watching our channel, who are helping us grow our channel. Every video you like, every time you subscribe or you encourage someone else to subscribe, helps us grow our presence, which at the end of the day adds more value and education for those who need it the most in that 2% club. And so whatever we can do to add value, that's the goal here. If you also want to leave in the comments anything that we can do to make this channel better, any other topics we can talk about, any questions you have from the channel, feel free to always do that, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to serve, and that's what we want to do with this channel. So let's first start off with the concept that it's never too late when it comes to tax planning. You're going to have to pay taxes likely every year in your retirement if you have a pension and $1 million or more saved. And the reason why is because you're always going to have a higher income, higher net worth in retirement. Now, if you had no pension and you had less than $1 million saved, then I would tell you, you probably are going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, and maybe you shouldn't do anything. And maybe it is too late at this point if you're retired without an income coming again. But again, we know how unique your situation is. You know that already by watching all the channels that you have. And even think, if you're over 60 years old, then life expectancy is right around 80 to 90. So you've still got a lot of life to live, a lot of tax savings to save, but also understand the legacy plan that is in place. So maybe you may pass away, but your spouse still is going to be there, or you're going to leave this money to your kids or loved ones or whoever may leave it at the end of the day. So that's why Roth conversion planning is so important, because a lot of cases, we don't even really look at one of the client's lifetime. We look at both spouses' lifetime because of what's called the widow's penalty, in that if one spouse passes, you go from married filing jointly to single tax rates. But also we have to be aware of reducing taxes to beneficiaries. So if you leave your IRA behind to a beneficiary, then they're going to have to pay that over a 10-year period. They're going to have to pay taxes over 10 years, which could really expedite their tax brackets and force them to higher brackets when they may not want that to happen. Rather than, it used to be over the client's lifetime, they could take it out, what was called a stretch IRA. If you have an inherited IRA from a while ago, then that used to be the rules. But the rules have changed, and now it's only over 10 years. So if that's the case, maybe more of a reason to look at some Roth conversions, even if you are 60 or older, and even if you think it's too late. So really want to emphasize that point. It's never too late. And what it really comes down to, this is probably one of the most important things I'll say on this video here today, is that it's all about what your tax rate and your total tax rate that you'll pay today and what it will be in the future. And I'm not talking just about tax rates. I'm not talking about federal income tax rates. I'm talking about federal, I'm talking about state, I'm talking about Social Security taxation, Medicare premiums. The total cost for you to convert this money over to a Roth, what is the total amount of tax that you'll have to pay on that versus if you waited till you were 75 as an example, what would be the total projected tax that you would have to pay on it at that point? And I'll be very clear with you. We don't know what future tax rates are going to be. We mostly think that tax rates are going to be higher than what they are now. That's due to us being historically low tax rate environment right now. That's due to one big beautiful bill causing an extension of these lower tax rates. But as you know, we've got some deficits here. We've got some liabilities as a country. And so most experts would suggest taxes are likely to rise. And so we don't know if that's going to happen or not, though. And that's why we want to plan for both ways and really all three ways that taxes could go. Taxes could stay the same for the rest of your lifetime and for your children's lifetime, as we talked about. It could go up, it could go down. And that's why we talk about what's called tax diversification, which is another reason why Roth conversions can make sense for most people, is because now they can have a balance. Many people who first come work with us have all their money in tax deferred. They've been saving in their 401ks, IRAs for all these years because Roth didn't used to exist. But plus, they probably made the right decision of doing that. As an example, back in 1981, tax rates, the highest tax rate, I think was 69 or 70% at that time. And so at that time, you'd want to defer that rate. So right now, the highest tax bracket is only 37%. Well, if we deferred it here and then we paid it here, we saved quite a bit of money on taxes. And so that's ultimately the thing that we have to talk about again, is paying the lowest tax over our lifetime is our goal. And that's how we figure it out here. But a lot of people are considering right now, with tax rates lower, as we talked about, with maybe they're in that window of opportunity between 60 and 63, they may not have to pay as much Medicare. Maybe they're not taking Social Security yet, so they could look to do some now. So these are all things that we want to look into when making this decision. So let's talk about some of these windows of opportunities if you're 60 to 63, as I mentioned, and that's when it comes to Part B Medicare premiums. Now, you also have to pay more for Part D, but that's a lower amount, so we're going to focus on Part B premiums here today. The higher income at 63 and older, the more you're going to have to pay at Medicare. So if you're 63, your income is $300,000, well, then you're going to have to pay increased Medicare when you turn 65. So it always looks back 2 years. Now, it's only for 1 year. And then when you're at 66, it looks at your 64 income. And so we see a lot of people in this 2% club category that have to end up paying more in Medicare premiums in retirement. Now, only 7% of retirees pay increased amounts in their Part B premiums. So most people don't have to deal with this or worry about this, but the people we deal with, high income, high net worth, they're seeing this pretty often. But you can get ahead of this. If you do Roth conversions between 60 and 63, you're not going to have to worry about that Medicare premium calculation because now you can have more in Roth, so that when you do take out money at 63 or 75 or whenever that age is, you're going to have a lower income if you take from the Roth. And so this can allow you to get ahead of that conversation and can save you a lot of money in taxes as time goes on. So that's one really key consideration if you're over 60 to think about. But if you are over 63, you also have to consider the other side of that to know that you may do a Roth conversion and force more Medicare premiums to be the cost to increase. Now, I'm not telling you that's not what you should do. We actually have clients that do pay more for Medicare at 63 or older to get some Roth conversions done, because we look at the lifetime Medicare cost, not just the 1 year Medicare cost. So you have to have a big vision, big picture when looking at things like Roth conversions. You don't want to just look at it from a 1 year point of view. And we've seen a lot of people that maybe they try to DIY or they work with their CPA who may not understand the tax planning element of future thinking. And so they just look at it as, why ever pay a tax? Don't ever pay a tax today. Defer, defer, defer. Well, that's probably what's gotten into us into this mess now. And if we keep doing it, it's only going to become worse and worse and worse. If you have $1 million now and you do nothing about it, you're 60 years old, by the time you're 70 years old, if you see a 7% return, your 1 million turns into 2 million. At 70, if you go till 80, your 2 million turns into 4 million. 80 to 90, your 4 million turns to 8 million due to the rule of 72 if you see a 7% return. And so if you had an $8 million tax burden eventually, that's going to be a lot of taxes that you're going to have to pay throughout that time, but also your legacy is going to have to pay your spouse, your kids on those taxes as time goes as well. And so this is something that's going to get really, really intense over time. And a lot of you have had your investments grow quite a bit here recently, which has been awesome. but it's only making this tax situation worse. And so that's why it's always important to plan for ahead, right? If we were to do Roth conversions 5 years ago, we could have paid the taxes at that point, and all the extreme growth we've seen lately would be tax-free. And so that's another advantage to think about here. And that's why people think, well, it's too late, I can't get the growth. No, it's never too late. It's all come down to what your total tax is now, what you would pay in the future. The next window of opportunity is when it comes to taking Social Security. Now, some of our clients delay Social Security till 70 so they can do more strategies like a Roth conversion, so they can start to shift more over at lower tax brackets. If their Social Security is projected to be $60,000 between both spouses, not having that $60,000 of income allows $60,000 more of room if maybe they're trying to maximize a bracket, the 12% or the 24% bracket there. But it also allows their Social Security to not have to be taxable now, which it likely would be with their pension. And so they can wait till a longer period of time. That allows them to get a higher amount guaranteed for the rest of their life. The break-even point's around age 80 to 83, where that starts to become advantageous, where you receive more from Social Security. So if you expect to live before that, maybe not something to consider. Maybe you look to take it earlier, but that's something that we've seen a lot of people look out there, so they can have that window of opportunity to be more tax efficient, especially knowing that if they want to leave a legacy behind and they want it to be tax free or Roth, then that could make more sense to do as well. Or maybe they're worried about their spouse. If they pass away, they want to make sure their spouse is left with the higher of the two Social Securities, and one of them is maximized so they can get the maximum benefit there for the rest of the time moving forward, or some times when that can make sense from a planning standpoint. And then again, if we're moving the money to a Roth, now when we do take our Social Security, we can take from Roth at that point to lower our income to the point that we want to. And so that can kind of play off of each other, as you can imagine. We've already mentioned this next consideration, but definitely worth spending some more time on it, is preparing for that future required minimum distribution that's going to come out when the government forces you to take out money from those tax-deferred investments. So obviously that's the window we're talking about here, from 60 to 75 as an example. Once that time comes, you can't Roth convert the RMD amount. So if your RMD is $40,000 as an example, then you can't convert 40,000 and that will be part of your RMD. You have to take out the 40,000, and then if you wanted to do a 40,000 Roth conversion, you technically be withdrawing 80,000 because it has to go on top of that first withdrawal first. And now in that circumstance, we may look to withhold the taxes from that 40,000 we're required to take out. So maybe instead of only withholding 25% tax, which is maybe your bracket with state and federal with where you are, maybe we look to take out 50% from that first 40,000 so we can cover the tax bill on the next 40. So all of that 40 can go to the Roth IRA. We're not withholding any taxes on that. So that's just something, the pro tip there. But again, most people watching this aren't to that age yet. But when that time comes, just know that you can think ahead and do some cool strategies like that when that time comes. Now, the thing I want people to pay attention to when it comes to preparing for RMD is just understand the impact of the growth of your investments over time. So let's just say we expect a 6% investment return on our investments over time. Maybe some of it's a little protected, and that's what we're expecting to get each year moving forward. So let's say we have $3 million. That's an easy number. $3 million at 6% growth is 60,000 three times. So 60,000, so 6% of $1 million, $60,000 of growth at just a 6% rate. And then if you times that by 3, you're looking at $180,000 of gain from 1 year of a 6% return. And then the next year it compounds off of there and off of there. And so that $180,000 should grow every single year if you just let it sit, cook, and marinate over time is ultimately the consideration. So I bring that point up because that's why these Roth conversions can be so important, because your RMD only continues to grow as your investments grow as that time approaches, and ongoing throughout taking RMDs as well. And so some people may think in this 2% club category, I'm just going to convert up to the 12% bracket. Now that may make sense. We actually have done that for some of our clients, and it makes sense for some currently. But very little of the times is that typically enough to really make a big dent if you have a larger pension and you have $1 million or more saved. So obviously it depends on your situation. I don't know how much your pension worth. I don't know how much your Social Security is worth. I'm just trying to speak generally of what we see there. But if you, for example, the 12% bracket with a standard deduction added on top, you may be only able to convert around $130,000 if you're married filing jointly, if you have no other income at all. But if your pension is $50,000, your Social Security is another, $40,000 of it's taxable, you're at $90,000. That only leaves you $40,000 to convert to maximize that bracket. That may not be enough to really keep up with the growth that you're seeing. So I want to show a bigger picture here that we have to look at more than just 12% sounds good. Well, you may, with your RMD and your pension Social Security, end up beyond the 12% bracket when RMDs kick in. So maybe you want to start to get ahead of that point would be the consideration that we would look at. And that's why a lot of our clients really look into that 24%, especially from 60 to 63 before Medicare tiers kick in. Because if you're going up to the 24%, 63 and older, you are going to hit tiers definitely from Medicare. So you have to be very careful at that point, as we talked about earlier. But if I'm 60, 61, 62, those are 3 really key years that I could do some pretty hefty Roth conversions and, not have to worry about the increased Medicare premiums, but also start to really get ahead of some of this growth. And again, all that tax-free growth will be in the Roth moving forward versus the tax-deferred, where now I'm going to have to take out more and pay more tax as time goes. So that's why earlier on in your retirement can it be more impactful to do these Roth conversions. But again, never too late to get ahead of this. Even if you're 65, 67, you understand this, how it compounds over time, especially if you're going to live a long retirement or leave that legacy like we talked about. And another consideration that we've already talked about earlier, but just to make sure it's on the checklist here, is that the lower tax rates we could potentially be seeing right now and taking advantage of those rates while we can. One big beautiful bill is a permanent tax reduction, but permanent just means it's permanently in place until it gets changed. And so we all know how that works. Rules can change. Tax rules are written in pencil. So this is likely going to change over a lifetime is what we would expect. Definitely during my lifetime, and obviously with most people we work with in their 50s and 60s as well. But even if tax rates go up in the future or even down in the future, we don't know, but let's say they go down in the future, I would still recommend Roth makes sense because they're likely not going to be down for the rest of your retirement or the rest of your legacies, your children's retirement. And so it's all about that tax diversification piece that we've talked about, and to make sure that we have a balance. And we always tell people, don't put all your money in Roth. That typically doesn't make sense, but we want more of a balance. But right now the imbalance is everything in tax deferred. That may not make sense. Let's start to shift some over, and let's make sure we can have more control and freedom in our retirement. Now, here's a unique point that maybe doesn't apply to everyone, but if you have the opportunity to delay your pension, that could open up even a bigger window of opportunity for Roth conversion. So maybe you can take it at 65 instead of 60. That could open up 5 years of no pension income, and maybe your pension allows you to even get a higher amount if you wait till 65, and then you can really start to tax and Roth convert in the lower brackets efficiently. So not an opportunity for everyone out there, but times that we've seen that, it could make a lot of sense to get ahead of that. And in very rare cases too, we've seen clients even have, maybe a 10-year pension. We deal with so many pensions all over the entire country that we see pensions sometimes where, hey, it only is going to pay out for 10 years as an example, or 5 years as an example. Well, maybe in that case, if it's a really high payout, maybe you don't do Roth conversions. And yes, you maybe do it later on at that point because now that pension is going to go away. And now you could replace that with Roth conversions. Or maybe you're doing lesser Roth conversions and now it opens up more opportunity when that pension goes away. So a lot of creative planning depending on how your pension works. Another pro tip for Roth conversions for this crowd is to think about how your asset allocation is for each of these investments, right? So if we have a Roth IRA, do we want to have that more aggressive or more conservative? Well, if we don't have to pay tax on the growth, I probably want to be more aggressive because the more risk, the more reward over time is what we should expect there. Now in our IRAs, we may want to be less aggressive there, knowing that we do have to pay tax. So maybe instead of the 6% return, if we get a 4 or 5%, guaranteed rate right now, well, that's not going to be as much of a tax burden. And I know you're saying, well, we always want the higher rate, Joe. Of course you do. But again, risk and return. So if you want to have more protection in your plan, we typically would lean towards having a portion of that protection being the tax deferred side of things versus the tax free. We want that to grow as much as possible. And that can lead to a lot more opportunity for your plan. The last window of opportunity point I want to mention here for Roth conversions after 60 is make sure you're not just guessing of how much to Roth convert. We've talked about a lot of the technical things to consider in this video, and we don't want people to miss and leave money on the table. And so working with the right calculators reports to ensure you're making decisions right is going to go a long way. And especially working with a team who understands this can help make sure you're making the right decisions with this. So if you're looking for more guidance on this, I have two things I think can help you. One is if you want to just request our book, I Hate Taxes, go do so in the description below, and our team will send that out to you. So you can, if you're looking to DIY, or maybe you're not sure if you're looking for a team yet to hire you, that should give you a really good resource to either decide of what you want to do there and just provide more content on Roth conversions. I have a lot of topics on that book about Roth conversions and how that plays into an entire retirement plan along with all the other tax strategies that can be really valuable. as well. But if you are watching this content, maybe you've already read that book, you've already requested it from us, and you are looking for additional help, feel free to reach out to our team. We can schedule a 15-minute time to see if we could be a good fit to work together. And we always love working with people from this channel because it's the exact type of people that we work with. People who are analytical, people who are that engineer mindset, who really like to get deep into the plane, who really want to make sure they're not missing anything, who really care about their life savings because they wouldn't have been successful if they didn't care about it to this point, and they want to find a team that they can trust and that's going to do things the right way. So if that's you, feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect. And with that being said, that's all I have of today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement.